I have ADHD, I had dyslexia, I didn't know it until I was an adult. Horrible student, had really, really bad grades, GPA, study ethic and everything, but I always knew I wanted to create or like put my efforts into something.
Yeah.
Starting that class, there was something that just like immediately clicked with me.
Yeah, like I can do
like
this.
Getting into editing for the first time or just coming up with an idea for something like that and really getting my hands behind every step of the process in that way was the first time that I immediately had that sort of confidence in my life that I really, before that point, didn't have.
Welcome to AFJ, A Filmmaker's Journey. This one I think I might say this every time, but like this one I'm really excited about. Seriously though.
Heck yeah.
Because you and I have come up together in so many ways, and I'd love to see where you literally started, and where you're at now. Tyler Pierson, everybody.
Thanks, guys. It's a pleasure to be. Yeah. The experience is real. Thanks, man. Yeah. I've been so stoked for this. I've been doing a ton of reflecting and thinking about a lot of those early days, and I'm sure we'll get into it and everything. But really, some like foundational pieces of me as a filmmaker and everything started with you, and with like where I clashed on your own journey and where you were going and everything. So it's sick.
Yeah, I'm super excited because like I want to start this whole podcast out by hearing about where you're at currently in your career, and we want to talk a little bit about the present, and then we'll dial back all the way to the beginning and we'll kind of talk about your journey all the way through. But right now, what is Tyler doing currently in his career? Where do you work? What do you do? What's your passion? Just anything that you want to talk about that you're currently working on as a filmmaker. Cool. And do you consider yourself a filmmaker? That's like the biggest question I like to ask people.
I was listening to your interview with Jack on the way to work today and everything, and him talking about how it hasn't been until like the last like 4 years, I think he was saying, until he considers himself a filmmaker. And I feel like especially coming up I was very much raised in I loved movies growing up and everything like that, but I was very much like raised in like the YouTube space. I like the Casey Neistat and everything. Like all throughout high school was just a major inspiration. I was like, oh yeah, I want to do that. And then I saw Devin Supertramp. You know what I mean? Like everything that he was doing. Like, oh, my whole dream is to like make action sport like videos and everything like that. And so for a long time, making videos was just like making videos, and so that was like just like I was like, oh, you're a videographer, you're this and that sort of thing. And then growing up and doing it a little bit more professionally and everything, it's the term like filmmaker feels like you kind of like get confused or like, I don't know, am I allowed to call myself a filmmaker? Do I have to just like strictly make like feature length movies in order to call myself a filmmaker? Or am I making anyways? So to answer your question, I think I do consider myself a filmmaker, but probably honestly only within like the last year and a half.
This actually came to me when I was talking to Josh Christensen, which that one hasn't come out yet. I asked because I asked him, I was like, do you consider yourself a filmmaker? I never asked anyone else that because I just kind of assume. I think filmmaker's definition has changed over the last decade big time. Like if you were a filmmaker 20 years ago, you're in the movies, right? But like I think with full-time filmmakers school and things like that, it's kind of changed. It's become kind of a personality that does creative work in video. It's like doesn't have anything to do with film anymore. Totally. But I don't know. It's like it's just the development of the name filmmaker has changed for sure. Totally. I like to ask that question because I think we're all filmmakers, but we're not dealing with film. And I feel like the term filmmaker is almost like an imposter syndrome question. Like I'm not qualified. No way.
It's
I'm
like
not making movies.
You're waiting for someone to say like, oh yeah, you're a filmmaker. You know what I mean? Like until like your friend addresses you as a filmmaker or like someone that you know, then you're like, oh, I guess I am.
I love that because you know what I just decided? If you're on this podcast, you officially have the stamp of approval. You're a filmmaker.
I hope I'm getting an email with a certificate.
So now I'm telling you.
Thank you.
Just like
you're
a filmmaker, bro. That's why you're here.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
So now let's talk about you. Talk about your career right now, what you're up to.
Yeah. So I currently, professionally, I am in-house, do all the in-house video for a company called Chirp, who are actually local in Utah. And then outside of that, and big emphasis on outside of that, because that's really where my passion is right now and everything is, I make films. I make short films currently and everything. Currently working on writing a feature and everything. But my real passion is that side of storytelling. And so I've made 2 short films over the last year and a half, over the last year really. And like as soon as 5 o'clock ends, all the rest of my time and focus and everything is like completely going into refining in that space. And because speaking of what we were opening with, the film space is so interesting because people who are working on films is like a lot of the times not the same people who are also that you're hiring for a commercial at the exact same time. And so networking and meeting people that are in the space like that has been such a completely second half of my film life journey and everything that so much time is spent now building up that.
So what you're saying is Chirp's commercial,
correct,
and then after 5 o'clock is movies,
right?
Features, short stories, narratives, I guess is the best way to say it.
Yeah.
And you're saying networking in the two are super different.
Yeah.
So like you're not using the same people you'd work on with a commercial you would use in a feature.
So
or a narrative.
Yeah. So crew wise, a lot of it remains the same. Opening it up more to like I find it's really helpful meeting other writers, meeting other Zane obviously is a close friend of both of ours. Meeting other writers, meeting other directors who are like on the same path and everything. It can be because a lot of the times I think in other spaces like that, if they're just not working on that, it's hard to get the same sort of feedback that you're getting from someone that's like, this is my 6th script that I've written this year and everything, and not someone who has a little bit more of an idea of what kind of notes and feedback.
It's probably more methodical, obviously way more refined.
Right.
It's got to be perfect. But then you've got these commercials. It's like, we need ROI.
Right.
We need to make money now.
Totally.
So freaking get it out and then start the next one and constantly iterate.
Yeah, very much so. Very much
so. Because I mean, we'll get into this, but like you came from the Nomatic world, and I'm sure that's very similar.
Right.
To Chirp.
Right.
Like you're selling a product online.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
Super cool.
Yeah. And honestly, I mean, and there's still like, even outside of Chirp and stuff like that, there's still different like freelance clients or getting hired to just direct commercials for things as well is also something that's really fun and exciting, and it's also something that I do as well. But as far as like the day in and day out right now, it's currently
very cool. And so you've done 2 short stories, and what do you do with them?
It's a great question. I was talking to someone about this the other day. They're like, oh, that's like so cool. Like you get to like make a short film and you build a world and a story and stuff like that. And they're like, you know what happens after that? I'm like, you know what I mean? It's like as soon as you start writing the script, you immediately just start losing money.
Yeah.
You know, it's not even like making like a spec ad or something when you're like, okay, I'm making this. I mean, I guess it's kind of like a spec ad. Yeah. But it's like I'm making this so then I can get money later on. Yeah. And I feel like when you're working on narrative work and stuff like that, it's almost like, okay, well, I guess I'm just gonna put thousands of dollars of my own money into this thing, and then the next steps is like putting it in festivals, putting it online, finding different audiences and trying to, honestly, the biggest thing is just like, how can we just find people to see it and everything.
It's like the Napoleon Dynamite thing. Like you want to make some and then have it just go crazy.
Totally.
And you don't know until you know, obviously, and take so much time of your, not just money, but also so much of your time.
So much time.
Yeah.
So much time. Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, we're actually going to do something different. We're going to use this thing like it should be. And we're going to look, I want to tell what was your most recent film. And then let's pull it up on the screen. Was it the Kirby vacuum one?
Yeah, the vacuum cells one.
That one's so funny. So then let's pull. Just show us just a little piece of it. Okay. I want to hear a little bit about it.
Oh,
and like
cool.
why
fun
you wrote that.
Oh, I love that.
And then also just like how it's done.
Cool.
Because I know you've submitted to some film festivals.
Yeah. That sounds great.
So this is all about the now, the present, and then we'll dial it back.
Sweet. Wow. The big screen.
How long is it?
It's about 15 minutes.
Okay. Well, we'll pull this up. I want you to just kind of talk to me about the film in general, and you have a fun style, and I'm curious to also hear like what inspired your style, and why you made this.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I a lot of style. I feel like changes all the time, or at least it like refines as you get to know more of who you are as a filmmaker and everything.
Yeah.
But
you see it in Chirp too, like it's the same way you shoot Chirp that you
thanks. I honestly, a lot of it is like intuitive and stuff like that. I think it comes a lot from, I love watching movies and everything like that. So a lot of it comes from like my favorite directors and the way that I see that they communicate emotion and the way that people interact and everything on screen and stuff like that. And so a lot of it is that, and also a lot of it is just working with really great people. Yeah. We shot this with my buddy Parker Eatman is his name, and he's the DP on this. And Parker and I, I think we spent like 4 or 5, it's only a 15-minute short. I think it's about that many pages as well on the script. But we spent, I think, 4 or 5 nights in a row for hours and hours, just going over every single line of it, going over every single page and everything, and just asking ourselves like, okay, right now, where exactly would the camera go? And then we'll kind of, one of us will have an idea and the other person will get excited about it.
Collaboration.
Exactly. And we'll kind of like fight about it until we both agree that there couldn't be anywhere else that the camera's going to be for this.
So are you on set deciding that? Or no, you said pre-production, you're deciding that. And then when you get on set, you're going to talk about it even more. And what's interesting is like, I know, so me and Zane are that, like I've shot so much that he's directed, and just having someone to be able to bounce ideas and get their perspective, but doing it beforehand first to get it all out of your head. And then when you're on set, you obviously have elements, you have problems you have to deal with, and then things just come up that you work together on, and you thought you communicated everything, but then you find out quickly that it isn't the case.
Totally. And sometimes too, it's just like purely logistics where it is total problem solving. Like this whole scene, for instance, I wanted to film on a glide cam. Yeah. And the camera that we were shooting on, we shot on the Red Raptor. Yeah. And we just couldn't get access to one in time or get all the right things and stuff like that. So we ended up getting an easy rig and everything. So it has a little bit more of a shakiness to it instead of the smoothness that I was originally imagining and everything.
Yeah. Problems solving.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we can kind of I think we just pause it there, and then I would love to hear, let it roll. And then I want to just hear about the festivals, how it did, things like that. Like when I asked the question, what do you do with it? Like, what have you done with this?
Yeah. So it's kind of still in the festival circuit. So we have submitted it to a couple places, been denied by a couple places as it goes. And then we've had success in a festival called the Indie Film Festival in Los Angeles. And it won, we were lucky enough that it won Best Director, Best Actor, and then was a runner-up for Best Comedy Short. And that was really, really exciting and really, really fun and like a cool way to figure out, because again, the festival space is so new to me. Yeah. I have never been anything like that, and it honestly is a whole world of itself, and it feels like a lottery machine sometimes. Obviously, there's like some craft and everything the right things have to line up. Yeah. But truthfully, it's mostly, a lot of it is just rejection. Like you just submit to like a lot of places, you try your best, you kind of try and fill it out and stuff like that.
Numbers game, I'm sure.
Yeah. As a lot of times, filmmaking is just being told what you made isn't good enough. Yeah. And keep trying. Yeah. You know what I mean?
And that's the story you hear with anyone that's come up and made it, essentially.
Totally.
It's all failures and denials, and it's how you put it into perspective.
Totally. Yeah. So that whole part of it is we have another one that is not yet. We're probably about a month away in post-production from having it completed. Yeah. That we've learned a lot from the festival run for the vacuum salesman and the different sort of things that should be emphasized and the effort of on the back end of putting it into it. That you're just always learning and always just kind of figuring out.
Well, I'm so interested in it because I never have gone this route one bit. Everything I've done has been Devon Supertramp and then online, like e-commerce, selling products online. Okay. So like I've never gone into this world, and I've talked to Zane about this. I'm like, eventually what I've learned is I love business so much is that I want to get to a position where I can invest in films. And so I told Zane, I was like, you'll be my first person that I invest in. I would love to executive produce a TV show.
Oh, that's so cool.
So this world is like amazing to me, and I think I'd love to get there eventually, but right now it's like so product focused.
I love that though, honestly, if you're okay with me talking about that a little bit.
It's all out in the open.
I love, it's actually one of the things, you and I have known each other for a long time now, and working with you at the very beginning and everything, has, I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, but been really structurally really good for me. You're a very detail-oriented person.
Yeah, you've been through my feedback process.
So yeah, exactly.
You've been
made me
made to feel this small, but then I hopefully build you back up.
No,
eventually.
100%. But you're such a detail-oriented process. Even as we were setting up for the podcast and everything, there was little things that you were changing and doing and stuff like that just immediately brought me back to like, oh yeah, that's right. Tyson's incredibly meticulous about everything, which I really love about you.
Who knows about it?
Yeah.
So,
but I love so much that you gravitate and have such an interest and talent in the business side of things too. And Zane mentioned this too, and I echoed. I relate to him in that way that I hate it. I really
business.
I really
it makes you want to vomit.
yeah it's like all like the details of like figuring out some the problem solving of business.
Yeah,
I don't get the same sort of enjoyment that I get from the problem solving of making movies or commercials or anything in that space necessarily. But I feel like you need both of them. Like I feel like you can't avoid it. You know what I mean? You can be like, oh, I hate it. It's the worst sort of a thing. But you can't just completely shut it out and pretend like it's not gonna like bite you in the butt every single step of the way and everything. Yeah. So it's great to have mentors like you who are so incredibly focused on that stuff.
That's really nice of you. I really appreciate that. And I think we all have a role. Obviously, there's a reason you hate it. There's a reason I like it.
Right.
And then we all kind of just continue this building each other up to the point that we can all do what we love together.
Totally.
And that's like, and I'm still figuring my stuff out, and I'm sure you have a ton to figure out as well as you're going down these routes, which is a great little segue into your journey. And I love finding out where people start and what gives them the spark of like, especially, 10 years ago, I don't know if it was that long ago, maybe a little less than 10 years ago, the career paths have changed so much over the years. And when I started, social media wasn't a thing. But you just like something sparks an interest in being creative. And I want to hear about if you had an initial like, I want to do this, or you wanted to actually go a completely other route. And you just kind of like, I want to hear about the journey to get to that point of now where you're at. And we're going to talk about all the little things in between. So
great.
Where did you first get that creative spark?
I owe it a lot actually to my brother.
Cool.
My older brother, Tim.
Yeah.
He's not in the film space, but he was the first person that I ever met growing up who said I wanted to make movies. Like he wanted to write his own books and he wanted to direct his own movies and stuff like that. And even, and I remember being a kid and being like, yeah, right, dude. Yeah. And I'm like, that's not right. Like the idea of like Hollywood making movies and being a director and stuff like that was such completely foreign territory and felt like another world of things. But because he was so excited about that idea and stuff growing up, we would make homemade movies and everything like that. Would do little, mostly just spoofs of other popular movies and everything.
I think I've seen some of those.
Yeah, unfortunately,
because you have super funny. Yeah. And that's something, not to take us off track, that I didn't know about you for quite a while.
Okay.
Because I was like your boss, and you're more serious and reserved around me, and I'm admittedly pretty intimidating to most people. I mean, my entire life I've had people be like, you're scary, and then you get to know me, and then they're like, oh, you're actually a nice guy. So you're pretty reserved, and then as you like started to open up, you're silly, man, and you're funny.
Yeah.
And you
I'm
have
so goofy.
You're so goofy. And so then I think a lot of that, I remember seeing those videos and I was like, wait, that's Tyler? Wait, what?
Oh, funny.
So,
Yeah. It's true. The rumors are true.
And that's exactly, you're going to see little bits of Tyler as we talk.
And so Tim and I, we would make all those movies and everything growing up. And then when high school hit, there was a TV broadcast program and everything that
Lehigh.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Dude.
Lehigh. Forgot that's another intersection.
Your teacher?
Yep. Dustin
Holy
Topham.
smokes.
Shout out to Dustin if you're watching this.
Dustin Topham, you've inspired a lot of people to go down this road.
Come on board.
That's literally where I was just like, I like computers. And editing's fun, but it was started in that same class.
Totally. Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. Dustin is like a father to millions of children, is what it seems.
Yes.
Yeah. And more. Yeah. And
that could be taken over, but we'll leave it for you to
that's so I got into the TV whatever it's called, the broadcasting program and everything.
TV production for news or something like that.
For losers, I think is what they title it. And the and my brother Tim was in it, and so I took the class and everything. And that was the first time in my whole life I have ADHD, had dyslexia, didn't know it until I was an adult. And was a horrible student, had really, really bad grades, GPA, study ethic and everything, but I always like knew I wanted to create or like put my efforts into something.
Yeah.
And starting that class, there was something that just like immediately clicked with me.
Yeah, like I can do this.
Yeah, like getting into like editing for the first time, or just coming up with an idea for something like that, and really getting my hands behind every step of the process in that way was the first time that I immediately had that sort of confidence in my life that I really before that point didn't have. And so at that point, kind of since then, it's been like a lifeline that it's like, oh well, I really wasn't good at anything else before this point, and this is the one thing that like finally like clicked and spoke to me. And so kind of like what I mentioned after that, it was like it really was like watching people like Devin Supertramp, like Casey Neistat and everything like that, that it was like, oh wow, that felt accessible. Like again, Hollywood, those things felt so far away, but someone on YouTube who's just like, you know what equipment they're using, you know what locations they're filming at and everything, and that is almost had this like homemade element to it and everything.
Like low production value.
Like totally
no money,
but still being able to like create some sort of like story and thread without the budget and without the resources, everything like that was really, really compelling and exciting for me. And so that was something that in high school I just really grew in my talents and my skill set, and put frankly all of my time into. Just kind of started skipping classes and only existed in the video room. And then when I went on a church mission, and when I came back, I wanted to get back into the space. Didn't really know where to get started. Had only done a little bit of freelance before I had taken that break. And funny enough, this is where our stories collide a little bit. I'll just tell it for everyone who's listening now. But I met you at a Chick-fil-A in Traverse Mountain, and I'd recognized you from watching the behind the scenes of the Devin Supertramp videos, and as you DPing everything there, and anyways, and so met you.
I'll never forget little young Tyler coming up to me. Hey,
just my finger in my nose.
You're like, and you're like drooling. It's a baby. But like, you came up and just chatted me up. I think I was with Haley and Nixon. And I watched your videos on YouTube and Supertramp, all this stuff. I was like, oh, cool, man. Great to meet you. And like, I think, did we exchange information?
Oh man. Well, as I remember it, I gave you my email. No, you were very nice. You were very kind. I gave you my email. You took my email, and then I didn't hear from you, which was my first mistake for not grabbing your email. And then
dude, I'm having these shoot moments, because this is exactly what happened with Devin Supertramp with me. I just told this story on my podcast. I was like, I met Devin, I got it. I told him I got his email and I sent him my stuff, and then nothing.
Right.
So
devastating.
Anyway, keep going.
And then I met you again probably a month later out of Vasa, and went up to you and put you in a headlock, started giving you know what I mean, and forced you to give me a project to start working on.
That's right. I forgot about that, because I think at that time it was like, was it Nomatic?
Yep. At that point you had just transitioned from Devin Supertramp to I believe you just started working for Nomatic. You were there for like
some projects to give you
a week or two.
And
so so you honestly gave me a chance to start building my resume and everything in that world. And we worked together, I think, for a year and a half at Nomatic, doing all the in-house stuff.
Did you do anything prior to Nomatic, video-wise, or is it just like
That's a good question.
Stuff?
If I did, it was like weddings.
Right.
It was like at like the very beginning of something like that. So I think if I was getting paid to do anything at that point, it was weddings or some family, or like people were being like, hey, we have a business. Make a little something for us.
Well, what was cool about that is you were the very first person I've ever had as an employee, or like not even an employee because you weren't my employee, you're Nomadics, but I was like your manager.
Right.
Like you're the first person I ever managed, and I learned a lot about myself through you. And so, because I remember interviewing quite a few people before I ultimately hired you, and you were a good fit, you stuck, and then the rest was history. We ended up just creating a lot of stuff together, and it was super cool. So I'd like to hear a little bit about your experience at Nomatic, and don't worry about offending me or getting like, was I a hard guy to work for? And then afterwards, let's go from Nomatic to the next steps after that. But talk to me about Nomatic.
Right, yeah, dude. Let me give you the inside scoop. Let me show you what it was.
Because we have a lot of same relationships too with everyone that worked there, which is kind of fun.
That's true. Yeah. Let me pull back the curtain. The Nomatic was good. It was hard. It was really hard. Yeah. And both of those things are very, like, it really is like the one without the other. Like on one hand, I was but a kid, like throwing myself in the deep end, trying to figure this thing, and having like imposter syndrome out the wazoo. You know what I mean? Like you were someone that I had very much looked up to before even getting to meet you in person, just out of like what you did for Supertramp and all your work then, and I think following you on Instagram too. It was like, oh man, you know what I mean? I really have to impress this thing. I don't know I remember the first time, one of the first sets you were, this actually was a Nomatic project you were working on a personal passion project, I believe.
Oh, for him. Well, for him.
Yep.
I forgot you came into that.
Yeah.
That was
and you assigned me to set up a light, like an aperture.
Yeah.
Right? And I immediately, I'd never done anything like that. Literally all I had ever done was like touch the camera and use the computer for editing and stuff like that. And I just remember having my heart sink and be like, how the hell? Like I felt like I was like putting the first rocket together.
I plug the into the
so it's gonna explode. And so there was so much of that stuff, of me really trying to be like assert myself into something like that.
Yeah.
And at the same time too, like you're saying, I think our personalities at that point, there was maybe a little bit of a clash.
Yeah.
Of like you said, you first got to know me as someone who's very reserved and shy and everything like that, which oddly enough is not who I am at all and everything. Yeah, exactly. But again, there was so much of me growing it and figuring out stuff like that. And you were someone who was so expertly dedicated in their craft and had known, again, like I said, very meticulous. And so knowing everything about every part of the process and everything, and just I was just trying to play catch up.
Yeah.
So much.
You were thrown into the fire for sure. And I'm that type of person where I like really like people to like go in firsthand and just start learning how to do it.
Right.
And just fail over and over and start to get better. And then ultimately you come out so much stronger.
Totally. And what I learned about myself too over that whole process is this, the way what motivates me to work on projects and to like stay up all night to work on something and into the next day and figure all that stuff out is purely motivated by just the process of it and having fun in the process, and not by this like, oh, it needs to turn out a certain way. I need to, you know what I mean? Like as soon as I can get rid of the intensity behind something, and as soon as I can get rid of this like pass or fail grade on something, it opens it up to this immediate like, oh yeah, I can do anything. I really feel like I am capable of anything in those circumstances. And that wasn't something at that point that I had yet discovered about myself and everything. So it was like me trying to fit myself into I think what worked very well for you. I was trying to be you and follow exactly as you were doing when that
you weren't
wasn't so when I'm not you, frankly, you know what I mean, like in different sides of the coin in that way. But learned so much.
So interesting. And how old were you?
Oh man,
you're like 22.
22. Yeah.
Holy smokes, just a baby.
Yeah, just a little baby.
But yeah, you're just getting started. And I think not only did you learn a lot, I learned a lot too. But the one thing that stands out to me the most when I think back to our relationship was the Josh Lynott Shargow edit. Yeah. And how, I mean, you've made some of your revisions. I kept like giving you more and more notes to like refine it. What was that like for you, like in that time, to push through that? Just the feedback, right? Because this is such a feedback driven world, and you, as much as like you're passionate about something like that, you have to kind of disconnect yourself in a way to like, you want it to be successful. Obviously you need to, you want these to be successful. Like you want them to turn into something. So you kind of have to get feedback even on those things. But then when it comes to like these product videos and even at Chirp, like disconnecting yourself in a way that's like, okay, I have to just be able to take notes. And Jack said it, but he's like, you got to let it go, bro. So I'm curious, thinking back to that, that's just the one thing that stood out to me the most, is just that feedback process.
I love that you brought up that example, because that honestly, that was like the edit that changed my life probably. Like,
Whoa.
100%. It really was. There was like what my process was before that edit and what my process truly was after that edit. And what Tyson's referring to is when we were at Nomatic, we did these mini docs essentially on people that were living life in a way that Nomatic kind of represented.
Yeah.
And
you can look that up. It's called Josh Lynott Life on the Move Nomatic. You can keep talking about it.
Yeah. And anyways, and so you flew out, filmed the whole thing, came back, and assigned me to edit it. And it was just like, how long were you gone for? Like,
I was gone for 10 days total because I did Shargao for a week, but then I did China, Shanghai for like 3 days for the luggage and stuff.
Yeah. And so there's like a week's worth of footage and everything to like sort through and put a story together and everything.
And it wasn't even like I was out there just shooting stuff randomly, and you had to take Josh's interview and
to make a story out of it.
Yeah.
And it was I created the whole process was like, oh, I've never done this before, got to figure this out.
So not this one. Josh Lynott. Oh, it's right there. Episode 5. Right there.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Yeah, that one. Freaking love this kid, man. And I have lifelong relationships with these guys. Like, they're all from Australia, and Shargao is like a place you would go to. Basically, it's like our Cancun.
Oh, funny.
But anyway, we'll let that roll while you kind of talk through it.
I essentially, long story short, not to get too into the weeds of it, but I made a version of it, sent it to you. Really, I thought I really liked it. I was like, oh man, I did it. I didn't think I could do it. I did it. And you're like, yeah, we got to change the whole structure of this thing.
Yeah, I basically made you start over.
Yeah, 100%. And I was devastated too. And I was like, oh, you kidding? And so went back through, took your notes and everything, almost begrudgingly a little bit, being like, why does he not see my vision?
And I knew it.
Made the changes, put so many more hours into it. And I was like, oh, now I really figured out this is, and your notes made it better too. That was the thing that I was like, well, damn it, he's right. This is a better video. Showed it to you again. And what you did is you changed your mind about some of the notes that you had before. You probably, I don't know if you remember that or not. And it was something I'm like, oh, he's changing his mind again. But you saw something different that was better in it.
Yeah, because you adding certain things made me change my mind. And it happened, dude. It happens with my guys all the time. And if you're listening, like John especially over here doing audio, like it happens all the time. And it happens with clients too, where like you're like, I freaking did that in the last cut.
Right.
But it's that like gut check of like, okay, take a step back, and this is gonna be better. But anyway,
totally.
Keep going.
Yeah, and it was exactly that process, which was
we put our foot in our mouth.
Yeah.
Over and over all the time. I do it all the time.
Totally. But to get on the other side of that is that became like another week of just working on this edit straight. Literally like just like bleeding my knuckles and tearing myself apart and being like literally for some reason felt so hard to get it to where it needed to go. Yeah. And then when it clicks, it's the best part I think about being a filmmaker is when it clicks. Yeah. It just clicks, and you're like, oh, this is how it was supposed to exist. Yeah. And it was that like that full process where I think up until that point it was like, okay, yeah, I like this. Oh, this is good. I'm gonna send this off. You know what I mean? Instead of getting to the point of like watching it again, then asking yourself like, oh, what could make this better? What's missing? Yeah. How do we really refine the story? How do we make it special? How do we like do something that's unexpected? You know what I mean?
It stretches your mind
totally.
And I think I'm not comparing myself one bit to not Harrison Ford.
You look just like him, which is crazy.
Who's the main Ford guy? Made cars. Henry Ford.
Yeah. I think so.
Freak, I call him Harrison Ford. Is when there was an engine he was creating, and they were like, that's impossible, and he kept telling him, go do it, go try it, go figure it out, go do it, and he just kept pushing people to go, and then they finally did it. So I'm not comparing it to like creating something like that, but that's so similar to creating an edit like this, where it's like that's all and I think we talked about it afterwards. I was like, look, I was just pushing you to continually expand your mind to be like, what else could we do? How do I tell a story? How do I fit pacing? How do I structure the way he's talking into a story? But I do, this was in this, like I said, you're the first person I ever managed. And so that was new for me on like actually teaching you. But I think we ultimately came out with something pretty cool.
Totally. And it's that like total I think that was the biggest thing I walked away with is it's just that process of refinement that you have to be okay. Just like that sometimes your stuff maybe even if it's not inherently bad, can be better.
Oh, it's never bad. It's just like you can always be better.
Yeah, totally. It's that push. And so honestly, to answer your question about the feedback and everything, there is that kind of separation that you have to lose your ego at a certain point, and it has to just be completely in service of like what you're trying to make. Like I have the phrase sometimes of like what's trying to come out of me, like what is the thing, and like kind of surrendering to the project instead of being like I'm going to force my way into this thing and to make it like manpower, make it better, sort of a thing. But like when you hear someone's idea or when you get feedback like that, just being completely receptive and be like, okay, what is this thing that's trying to come out of
saying?
Totally, that this thing ultimately is going to be better off or turning into.
I love that too, because it talks so much about collaboration, and then especially like we were talking about with your friend Parker, is like if you're just this egocentric, like we're doing what I want to do, and it probably came out with the new Star Wars, the prequels with Lucasfilm. Like, he was like that, where it's like he wasn't willing to take people's feedback, and ultimately those failed. But when he made the original 3, dude, it was collaboration, and it was like this group of people that all came together, and maybe he couldn't agree. He didn't have the rep to agree, but then when he made the other 3, and I mean, I watched those, I'm like, oh, there's so much we could have done better.
Totally.
But I love that. I think that I didn't expect to get into this like we are, but like it's so part of what we do as filmmakers is like separating yourself and be able to take feedback, not just because someone's right or wrong. It's just like, how do I improve on what I'm doing, stretch my mind creatively, and in those experiences you're gonna change your creative vision too, and then it's gonna bleed over into all the other projects in the future.
Totally. So yeah, man. Oh, honestly, that's kind of the hardest part too that I found even over the years of being a lot more receptive to that feedback loop and kind of surrendering to the project, is like having the balance. And I think this mostly actually happens on set. I feel like when you're in editing, you have a little bit more time to just sit back, watch it and everything. But especially when you're directing and you're on set and everything, and you have a vision, you come to set, you come prepared, you know exactly what you're wanting to get that day and everything. And either the actor says something that like the lines that you wrote aren't the way that you thought they were going to be delivered or everything, or like the way that you had it in rehearsal isn't really playing the same way and everything. Or if someone like comes up to you and they suggest I know we plan to do a wide shot in here, but like, you know, maybe this is a push-in or something like that. And like surrendering your ego of your vision of everything. It's like, it's having the balance of being like, okay, like I know what's right. It's almost like just following your intuition a little bit, where you're like, if you really feel it and you're getting pushback on it, and sometimes you just have to bulldoze your way through it and be like, trust me, I know what the other side of this is going to be. I have a very clear understanding. And a lot of it, and honestly, maybe the bigger example of that is like, oh, what I had has to change. It's like, just, you know, that phrase of killing your darlings and everything. It's just like,
kill the baby.
Yeah. Gotta kill the baby. I don't know what to tell you.
Seriously. But what I think this is getting to is then there's the flip side of it. And it's getting to a point where you push back, and you might get these suggestions on set, which are always the hardest, because you're the one I've worked the hardest on this. I know what this should be. So you get people whispering in your ear constantly of like, maybe you should try this. And, but then there's the flip side of this, which is like, you've gotten enough experience, enough exposure, you've had enough trials and failures and successes that you are like, I understand your vision, but like, this is what we're doing.
Totally.
But having that like confidence.
Totally.
Build it. It takes a while to get there. And I think you didn't have that yet at Nomatic. And I'd love to give you an edit now, and then you'd be like, yeah, I said, this is why I'm doing it.
I'm going to give you feedback.
Yeah, I'm going to give you
how you like that.
Exactly. But it comes with experience and just the conviction of knowing you're good at what you do.
Totally.
And this is my style, and then having the confidence to push back a little bit, but always doing it in a respectful manner. And I think that hopefully that in all that I was respectful. And then my thing has always been to push people hard and then always bring them back up, like bring them back up. And I hope that I did that with you at least. But I'm curious, we don't have to spend too much more time on Nomatic, but if there was any project that came out of Nomatic that you maybe had the most responsibility on, because I don't know what it is. I almost forget a lot of the things you worked on, but that one was like, and I know you helped with the Lewis Howes one too.
Right.
But I think at that point you knew more, you had way more of an understanding of what I was looking for. Is there a project that came out of Nomatic that you're the most proud of?
honestly,
you did some stop motions too, huh?
Yeah, I was gonna say, oddly enough, the thing that that I still put on my portfolio sometimes is the stop motions that we did and everything, which is funny because I've done like one stop motion I think since Nomatic.
Yeah.
So it's not like
which one stands out?
There was a lot we did of the travel pack, right? But there was one. It was the first time that we had taken it off the tripod and started like moving the camera with also moving the bag at the same time. And
see if you can find that one.
Yeah, that one. It actually should be on that same Vimeo page.
Yeah, that was hard for both of us because it was like we were now implementing camera moves into stop motion.
Totally. Yeah, which is something that I don't know if you'd done it before, but it certainly wasn't something that I'd ever tried before.
And that was what was cool about that time at Nomatic was when I made that first one before you had worked there, stop motions became cool. And like so many people started doing stop motions because that thing crushed. It had like an 8 ROAS for a long time.
Right.
And so all of a sudden you see all these other brands and I just remember thinking that was so cool that people were copying. But then we started to try to implement more and try to change the game a little bit. And that was the first time I had seen it, but also done it.
Totally.
Moving the camera is hard with stop motion.
Yeah. And honestly, even though I hadn't, I don't do a lot of stop motion. It's not really something I try and get hired for. Yeah. But but just like the work ethic and the process of making that stuff always
super detail oriented, the meticulous, just every frame freaking matters.
Yeah, and the sound design too. And honestly, another part of I think why it's like those stop motions because have stayed with me a little bit. Because I did the one for the Peter McKinnon backpack as well. And that one's honestly just working on that whole thing has just been fun. Being a filmmaker and seeing how many people use that bag and how much it shows up everywhere. Yeah. And just having our hands on it at the very beginning, I think is.
And they still use a lot of that. Like Braden still does all their stuff, and he created dude. Yeah. It's like we had the camera shift and then push in.
Yeah. And we had it on the.
Quality is so low.
It's okay. We will freeze our bodies until it finishes loading.
Yeah. I don't understand why the quality is so low. Maybe just leave it on a frame and just let it load. Yeah, just pause it. But anyway, this kind of stuff they still use for like their brand videos and like
cool.
A lot, even the Peter McKinnon stuff especially.
Yeah. It's really cool.
So you were there how far after the Peter McKinnon launch?
Oh man, I was there up until the Navigator, right after the Navigator. It was luggage, because the luggage or Navigator come last. I don't remember.
I think it was Navigator.
Okay, yeah. So I think it was whenever COVID hit. Honestly, is how I remember it. It's just like when COVID really really hit and stuff like that. I think.
Were you there when I did the Navigator shoot with Nick?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I was there for all the parts that you filmed.
No, but you were at the.
But yeah, I was there for everything.
Got it.
Yeah.
Crazy. And okay, so anyway, here's that video. Super fun. Because a lot of times we were doing like digital push-ins, but then we actually moved the camera for these.
Yeah.
So this was like ahead of its time.
Totally. I know. It's funny.
Now you look at it and it's like, it's all right.
Yeah. But it does hold up pretty well too.
Yeah.
With especially with the sound effects and everything. Yeah. Like that's definitely been something that stayed.
Braden's are so much better.
I know. Braden
and Andy.
Is Braden ever gonna come on the pod?
It's a sensitive subject 'cause I asked him and he just doesn't.
Oh really? Okay, that's someone
I love him for it because it's totally him. It's like he's such a behind the scenes, just like I just like to create.
Totally.
And he's just amazing. He's very private.
Yeah. He very much is. I very much respect about him. But I see all his stuff that he's killing it with.
Oh, good. And then Andy's the photographer there now, and
nice.
He's made some stop motions and they're freaking awesome.
Very cool. Very cool.
So I think that we've spent enough time on Nomatic. So you left for what reason?
I don't know if you want to put this on the pod. I got let go because COVID hit.
Oh my gosh, Tyler!
COVID hit.
I forgot.
The company got laid off.
I fired you. Dude, I feel so bad. You were the first person I told you on the call. It was like, Tyler, I've never done this, but I have to let you go.
I know.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that. I was at my house, and wow, freak. Sorry.
You hired me and you fired me.
So awkward.
How fun is this?
So why'd you leave, Tyler?
Yeah.
Well, you freaking fired me,
why'd you abandon us? Why made you want to do something?
Yeah, COVID though. It was totally out of my hands, and I remember Jacob and John being like, "You have to do it because you're his boss." And I was like, "No," and it was such a hard phone call, but I I had to let you go.
But it was good though, because the my interest at that point was changing a little bit. I actually
done.
I was at the end of my rope a little bit with this. Is something I've actually learned about myself. Is I have about a year and a half cycle for myself of interest. The thing that stayed the longest, honestly, is more long form narrative things and movies and stuff like that. That really is like maintained my interest over time and everything. But as far as just working on one thing for a long period of time, products especially and stuff like that, it can be hard to keep that like the same excitement. And because half the fun of filmmaking, honestly, is figuring out new ways to bring something into it that it anyways, so for that, so I let go, and then I actually
let me down easy.
You probably don't know this, but and then I
fired you. I don't remember that.
I did a coaching. I got into life coaching for about a year.
Do you care if we pull it up on your YouTube channel?
Oh yeah, I guess you
don't have to play anything.
I was gonna say I might.
I did my research.
Oh, nice. Is there still stuff on YouTube done? Okay, yeah, you're welcome to pull it up on YouTube then.
But yeah, so you started going down the. I remember you telling me that.
Yeah, because at that point, and
he had just started talking about that before you. I almost said before you left. Before I let you go. I remember we got pretty deep on Phil. Like we grew a lot in our relationship. We became close. Like I remember talking about my mental issues, and then you started telling me about yours. Right. And like we kind of bonded over this ADHD thing because I'm undiagnosed as well. But watching my son Nixon, I'm like, bro, you were just like, and I feel bad because you're gonna have to go through a lot. And I'm super ADHD, and we kind of connected on that. Right. Especially both of us being undiagnosed, but relating on a lot of things.
Totally. And a lot of this stuff. If you go on videos, let's see if you scroll down, because a lot of this stuff is outside of coaching. It's just.
And do you is this okay? We're showing do you believe in all this stuff still? Is
this
still part of you?
I actually still, with my coaching stint, it's the second half of that, which was I realized a little bit more of like when I realized I had ADHD, it really changed a lot of the beliefs about myself, my work ethic and kind of directionally and stuff like that. And so I changed my focus to putting it into a channel talking about stuff like that.
And it's shot so well too.
Thanks.
I love your Instagram post of your 2021 video.
Oh yeah.
And you show the coaching. That's what's cool is I see that style in your videos of this locked off, just it's kind of the Napoleon Dynamite. Just kind of like a little bit framed off the feet.
Right. I love that. Thanks. Yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out. And so I did coaching for a little while because at that point my interest had kind of changed to I wanted to emotionally more connect with what I was working on. Yeah. And again, that was something. It's funny enough. Again, something you and I talked a lot about with Tony Robbins and a lot of people like that. Both have a shared interest in how the brain works and why people do what they do and everything. And so I took about a year or so of just fully diving into human behavior, trying to understand it, trying to help other people with it. And it was at the end of that, I think, year and a half, where I made a video about my experience with ADHD and with anxiety and everything. And it was the first time that I had tried to make something a little bit more storytelling with video, pretty much since Nomatic. And anyway, and on my Instagram, it blew up comparatively to everything else that I had been doing, and I got so much response and people really saying that they were really touched by it and really related to it in a different way. Yeah, exactly. And it clicked that point in my brain that I'm like, oh, I don't have to. I really miss this. Yeah. And B, I don't have to do this the same way that I thought I had to. Yeah. You know what I mean? It kind of like opened up a new pathway of storytelling for me and even into my commercial work too, that I'm like, okay, I don't have to do this in the same style of these other people that I follow and everything, but what if I just made stuff like in the way that I want to make that, regardless of if other people fully connect with it or not. And that launched me back into freelance, and then actually getting hired
again
back into contracted back
myself.
Hired, fired.
And you know what? That time you did leave.
And
I was proud of you because it was a growth moment. And but going back to the freelance, there was a thought I was having when you were doing freelance, and you were coming into your own voice. You're starting to figure out your creative voice
Right.
in that time, which is so powerful. And so to get that kind of feedback from people, you're probably seeing that like, I'm a storyteller.
Yeah.
And I noticed that when we worked at Lumio is like, you really loved Zane's approach and just the direction he was headed, and you started to latch on to Zane, and I saw it and it was like, okay, you're basically going to be Zane's employee.
Right.
And you guys worked together. You worked under him and he kind of mentored you.
Totally. Yeah. And honestly, that another talk about just pivotal moments of my career and everything. Working with Zane was a complete. I remember when you had reached out to me to see if I wanted to do some contracted stuff out for you at Tyson Media and everything. And I was like, I don't remember fully how the conversation went, but essentially you're like, we need help concepting, writing things like script writing and everything like that. And
it was strictly Lumio, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Oh, actually, no, it was actually a little bit of mostly Tyson Media, and then it turned into mostly Lumio work.
What I mean is like, did you do concepting work outside of Lumio at Tyson Media, or were we bringing you in to help with concepting? And I can't remember, what other brands did you work with?
I worked with Zane on Tuxie.
Yes.
And then the water one.
Oh, Pure Water Technology.
Pure Water. And then we had concepted a couple of things that for some other projects that didn't end up doing because Lumio kind of took over at that point.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's good for me to remember. So then, anyway, you can keep going about Zane and kind of going under him.
Yeah. And so Zane, writer, director, very creative, incredible person and stuff. I came in with that only having experience in writing my own videos, what I was like doing on my YouTube, frankly, and stuff. But I was having so much enjoyment that when you asked me, and you're like, could you do that? I was like, yeah, I could do that. Yeah, sort of a thing. Even though I've never written a commercial in that way before, which is really funny to think about because I don't remember how many years ago it was. It wasn't that long ago.
No, it was probably 3 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. It would have been 3 because they started in the end of 2021.
Yeah. But before that point, like, again, I was horrible in school, failed every English class I was ever on, and never ever considered myself a writer, especially not professionally. And meeting Zane, he's someone that just immediately gives you so much confidence in whatever you're doing.
He's
you know what I mean? He's just incredibly trusting. You meet him, and if he has like a good sense about you and everything, he's just like, oh yeah, completely. Let me give you as much confidence as possible so you can execute on the highest level. Yeah, essentially. And so he was an incredible mentor for me. Honestly, just to like give me room to fail. Also, you know what I mean? Like that, I was like, oh, I can fail, and we can keep doing this. And it also gave me, obviously, then room to succeed in everything and consider myself a writer, or even putting myself in a position like that. So that was huge for me. But yeah, so that was kind of the.
Because you were directing, and then was it the flight school one that we actually gave you? And we were like, you're going to direct this?
I actually think Zane did that.
It was the one where we shot at Landon's studio. Landon, by the way.
Yeah.
And it was with the LED backdrop. She has like it was an airplane theme.
Right.
You didn't direct that.
I don't believe I did.
But you were with Zane.
I was always very.
Oh, you had the script. I think you were ADing.
Yeah. I think I was right on. Yeah, I think it was ADing too. And that, I think, honestly, was most of the projects that I did at Tyson Media. I think I honestly, I'll have to.
I just remember we gave you some moments to like.
Yes, exactly.
To direct.
There were some. Yeah.
We threw you in, and we were like, and then we were there for you to ask questions.
Totally. And it honestly was the best sort of growing moment and everything too, to like get comfortable as a director. Because I don't think I directed any big projects at Tyson Media. I wrote a lot, concept a lot and everything. And I think very much closely observed Zane as a director because he's very prepared, very good at working with actors. You know what I mean? Like very sensible in that way. That when I did leave Tyson Media, I got hired at another production company called FilmLab, which is also really great. Really cool production company. But I essentially got hired there as a writer director, which is funny to think about too, given that I didn't have a lot of experience as a director.
How did you get approached for that position?
Parker had worked
is he a friend of yours before FilmLab?
Yeah, Parker was. Parker's I didn't know high school with. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so he actually.
I've heard a ton about him.
Oh,
and I know that Braden's worked with you guys a bunch, and so he's told me, and I I see their reels at the end of each year,
Yeah.
and I hear that Parker edits them, and they're like, freak, man.
I know.
He's such a good editor, and I love editing. And so when I see something that's edited well, it's just like, it's such an appreciation for it. So no, I don't know the kid, but I definitely have seen his stuff.
Yeah.
And I know you work with him a lot on your project.
He's incredibly talented, incredible director.
He got you the job. And how did he, I guess you guys just talked that you were a director writer.
Yeah.
At that time?
Man, these are all such good questions, man.
Okay, good.
The timeline honestly gets so screwed up in my head of like, of how everything went down. I think I had, that's what it was, is while I was working, because I was contracted at Tyson Media, I also got contracted to do a couple stuff for Film Lab.
Oh, okay.
And so I was concepting some stuff and writing some stuff for them beforehand, and then that kind of put me back into they liked what I was doing for them, and then they hired me on through that, and because Parker was vouching for me in that way too. And so I stepped into Film Lab, and very, very quickly, it was like, I think I'd been there for like a week, and there was a project that there wasn't a defined director on, and it was a last minute thing. And I showed up on set with Mitch, who's the owner of Film Lab. And because I had written the script and already kind of knew it, and we were trying to figure out like the shot listing for it and everything, and I kind of just jumped into that role and started calling shots and kind of doing what I had seen Zane do as a director, and being like, okay, just gonna fake it, just gonna fake it, just gonna pretend like I know exactly what I'm doing. And just because of honestly just faking it, acting confident when I didn't, and also I mean a little bit like of that preparation of just listening to your intuition and trusting yourself in a moment like that.
But you're also finding you have a voice, and you're starting to nurture it a little bit, and then seeing it. Jack talked about it so well. It was like you show up and you just start to have intuition kick in, and then you just voice your opinion, and then people love it, and you're like, oh, what about this? And they're like, Aaron, you're good, man.
Yeah.
So it's super cool. I love that you went through that.
Totally, and it's exactly what it was. And I feel like that's honestly kind of, I felt like, been the story of my life and in my professional career, is just being open to really sucking at something first,
which
and
is
then
how it's gonna be.
Just really kind of like faking it and just like trying as hard as you can until you then don't have to convince yourself so much that you can pull something off, and that you actually can just listen to your intuition in that way. And so that honestly led me on a trajectory at Film Lab to write and direct a ton of projects there that I am really proud of, and it grew exponentially during my time there, and worked with some really, really, really cool brands.
Anything from Film Lab, is that what we're showing right
now? This is one. So this is Takea. It's a water bottle company, but they were having a stint in pickleball paddles for a little bit. So this is something that I directed and edited out in California. We also got to do something for the Utah Jazz, their 50-year celebration.
I saw that.
Yeah, that one was
so really cool. I would love to get, I mean, I hadn't even considered Parker, but I'd love to get, I've talked to Mitch about being on this, and then getting Parker on here too.
Yeah.
Because I've still not done a podcast yet with someone I don't know.
Oh, fun.
And I'm excited for that. I actually am doing one with Nate Taylor. I don't know him.
Yeah.
But he'll be the first one that I don't know, and I just want to like pick people's brains. I think
that'll be great.
Is this the jazz one?
Yeah, this is the jazz one. Sorry, the qualities.
I think it's because we're at 1080p on this, but it's out of focus anyway.
Oh, okay.
And then on that camera, it probably looks fine on that camera anyway.
Oh, nice. So that was a lot, and then I'd have to rack my brain. We did something for Sarah Hyland of Modern Family too. She had a beauty brand and everything. And then we did some other. There was a project for a company, a legal company called Zaf, that we did a.
And that's on your
like
Instagram.
A mockumentary, fun sort of.
I saw that you worked with the Will, the guy that was on the Lumio shoot.
Oh yeah. That's fun. Yeah. He's great. He's really so funny. Yeah. And then, but towards my time at Film Lab and everything too, really, really great guys, really incredible experience and everything. But it was at that point too, getting more comfortable as a writer director, that I was like, okay, I have been wanting to make narrative things for so long. Yeah. That kind of like finally pushed me right in that right direction, and essentially it's just give me the confidence to adapt and be like, okay, the more that you do, the more that you learn of what you like and what you don't like and everything. And I feel like it's been a journey of like, okay, how much can I continue to commit to this and refine in my craft in that way too. But yeah.
So then you're at Film Lab for a year and a half, and then you.
Yeah.
Always a year and a half. That's the trend.
Yeah. It actually, I think it was about something like that.
Yeah. So then, what happened after that?
So after that, we had worked for a company called Chirp. We'd gotten a project from them, another project that I was directing, and the the marketing guy at Chirp, his name's Brian, liked me on set, liked what I was doing, liked working with me just from the little collaboration that we had. And then when we did another thing for them later on, he came up to me and essentially offered me a job to go work in-house and to do essentially provide what I was doing at Film Lab, but for them on a more full-time basis and everything.
So cool. It's so similar to like what happened with me at Nomatic.
Yeah,
like,
I've thought about that actually.
And it's like very similar. You kind of got to take the money when it comes.
Totally.
Consistent income, especially if you're going the route of like writing features and narratives.
Well,
and I need something that's consistent.
Totally. And I was lucky enough to, and Brian's he's actually in this video. That's Brian.
And he's the marketing guy?
Yeah, he's the marketing guy. But I was lucky enough, and he was flexible enough with me that in my contract, I am full-time, but 4 days full-time. And so I actually have a day during the week where I can just work on my own projects and everything.
That's awesome.
And that was something that I had learned after like from being in-house at a couple places at that point, that I'm like, the most important for me as a filmmaker is I need space and I need time and I need to be able to work on my own stuff. Because I think that's why Chirp has been a really great experience actually, is because it's given me a lot more balance instead of just being like all of my daytime is like dedicated to this one thing. But now I get a day a week where I can actually like put it into my more narrative projects and putting it into, if it's commercial work, other outside of stuff that I'm working on, is just created this really, really great balance for me.
I love that. I think that's really cool of And Caller.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Chirp. Yeah.
Not And Caller. Because you've done stuff for them too, right?
Right. Yeah.
But that's super cool of Chirp as a business. And I try to take that same philosophy of like, I want everyone to thrive and do what they want to do ultimately, because otherwise you're going to leave. And that's why I left a lot of the jobs I left, is like you just hit your ceiling, you get burned out.
Right.
And so for them to be able to adapt, I think a lot of companies are moving to this, but like making sure you're happy, making sure you're fulfilled, but at the same time doing good work for them. So it's a win-win for both sides. When most of the time it's like you work here, then you're going to do everything that I tell you to, versus like I have things I like to do outside of work.
Right.
Then like I want to make sure that you're doing those things.
Totally.
So it's super cool of them.
Yeah, very much so. I'm curious actually, if you don't mind me turning a question at you.
Go for it.
How have you found balance in between your passion projects and in between meeting deadlines of client work and other jobs that come your way that obviously you want to do a good job on, but it's ultimately to continue to...
We got to first talk about passion projects. I don't have passion projects. That's interesting. What do I like to do outside of work? I think that it used to be, here's my thing, man. My passion is like ultimately spending time with my family. And it's just because I've loved my kids, love my wife. And like, that's probably where I like to spend my free time. And so I used to do videos, vlogs and things like that. Now I have like my personal Instagram and we'll create stuff, but it's going and having experiences with them. And that's why I've never gone this like filmmaking around like passion projects. I've never done a passion project.
Right.
Oh, I guess for him
would
have been one of those, but like, I feel like I've expressed myself enough in video. And then I've learned how I love so much about business now that, you know what? I think right now I'm actually experiencing what a passion project is as my time's freed up a little bit. Because once Lumio ended, all of a sudden I was like, whoa, I don't have that much to do. And so it allowed me to take a step back and work on my business. And I think that's my passion. So I'm trying to figure this out before I answer your question. Like, what is my passion? And I've actually really loved business. And I really I'm learning when I have an idea, I act on the idea, and then I love to maneuver, change strategies, learn things, like figure out what's working and then adapt. That's the word I'm looking for. Adapt to what we're doing. And so we're actually in the thick of, we're creating a school community, and I'm in this like trying to give back mode, kind of turning into the guru type, but like taking my knowledge and really trying to give it back. And that's part of why this podcast. So I think this podcast could be a passion, but it's like creating these communities for people to take the knowledge and experience that I have and help them implement it into their lives. So to answer your question, how do I find time to pursue my passions plus this? I've built a business that is self-sustained, and it's allowed me to have free time, and I did not expect that to happen. But I put so much of my time into Lumio that when it ended, all of a sudden I'd built systems around all the business we have currently, and I have amazing people working on each of my clients that I'm able to work with each client and pick and choose on what I actually work on and jump into things when I need to and want to, but then take a step back and look at the business as an overall business and just like, how do I work on it and grow it? And that's been my passion. So does that answer your question though? That's pretty long-winded.
Yeah. And like, even like, I'm curious too, like with that, like, is it hard for you to mentally, I guess maybe
turn
where
off?
I'm coming from. Yeah, exactly. Where it's like, how do you like leave behind? Yeah.
I don't.
It's so hard.
I don't.
It's so hard. I was curious if you have any advice.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
I think this is the hill we've built, and we need to die on it. Is like, we are creative. We're entrepreneurs. You're always trying to think of the next idea, and what you have to do, you really do have to separate yourself. And so it becomes this kind of, when I go home, I'll like sit down and I'll talk to my wife about all these ideas, and she's always just like, she listens and she's just like, oh my gosh, this guy never shuts off. And so I've just had to learn to just keep it to myself, but it's in my head. So it doesn't ever shut off. Honestly, then when I think about it, like making sure you have hobbies. So I don't know what you have as far as beyond filmmaking, but I love riding dirt bikes. And I've found that when I'm in a race or when I'm actually riding, that's like 20 minutes that I didn't think about anything but that race. So finding things like that as an outlet.
Yeah.
And then I also, the gym's super important to me. And so lifting weights, and I think I turn off there. But yeah, I don't know, man. You asked me a really hard question, and I'm really having a hard time answering it.
Oh, that's okay.
So I'm kind of just rambling.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I'm when I get really into something, I'm incredibly obsessive with it. It's like, I remember my wife asked me one day, because I'm always just like, if I'm like, whether it's like that I'm creating something, if I'm not creating something, I'm just like consuming movies behind the scenes, like director's podcast, like, like all the different things. It's just like this never ending well of like education for me, that it's like and it just like can be incredibly obsessive and everything. I remember my wife was like, do you ever not think about that stuff?
Or you don't?
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I actually just don't know another way. Like, I actually don't know how to turn this off. And so it's something that I've recently been trying. I don't have a lot of hobbies outside of movies and outside of making stuff.
Yeah.
And so I've recently been trying to find time where because even if I'm like taking time, like playing video games, I'm listening to a podcast about movies. And it's always within that realm and stuff like that. And I'm learning that it's good for me to have no time, that time put aside to focus on anything, but that has to do with film and everything. Just to completely turn my brain off, access that other side of my brain and everything.
The yin and the yang. There's the spiritual side, and then there's the physical side, and a lot of the times, and I'm the same way, I'm all about the physical side, and that's unhealthy, because then the spiritual side is like this subconscious, like, you got to tap into that, otherwise you'll drive yourself insane.
Right. Totally.
What you haven't, like, as far as, like, I'll turn the question back to you. You don't have hobbies. Like, what do you do currently? Are you able to do that right now, or are you still looking for that outlet?
I haven't found that outlet. But here's what's tough is when you're in it, when you're really, really enjoying something, you're like, I can't get enough of this. Yeah. A lot of times it's that. Yeah. Where it's like, I don't dislike doing this, but an excessive amount can lead me to like just like high anxiety and feeling like, you know what I mean? Like almost like a form of burnout in that way. Cause then if you consume so much of one thing, kind of like what you've been mentioning, where you can get into the point of just complete comparison.
Yeah.
Where you're like, oh, this is my aspiration. This is where I want to end up and everything.
Kind of forget.
And you kind of lose what's so exciting about this whole thing too in the first place. And it's so easy to get lost in like, oh, look at these incredible directors. Look at what they're doing. Look at, you know what I mean? Like people that are only like, that are even like a couple years younger than me, that are doing stuff that I wish I could have done, or that I wish I could be doing, and stuff like that. And then that's when it becomes a point of really unhealthy consumption of it. And so that's the point that I'm really trying to find the balance of, like, how do I continue to, because I really, every second that I am working on something that I'm excited about, it really is just full love and pure excitement and everything. And so I think for me, getting older has been trying to figure out how to sustainably continue to do stuff that really excites me and works for me, but keep it light and keep the stakes low, oddly enough. Like for me, like the more I can let go of the expectations of everything, then the more I can just enjoy myself and just create. It's like being back in high school again, or it's like when you're first making those things growing up and everything, and you don't care how good or bad it is. You're just doing it because
I think it comes up in every podcast. It's like this: the ignorance is bliss.
Yeah, totally.
You just don't know, and you just do stuff, and then you start to grow up, and that's when insecurities start to build. So that's that's kind of brought us up to where you're at, and I just want to wrap this up with where is Tyler headed? Like, what is your hope with this narrative angle, or even Chirp? And like, not that you have to, what does your career look like in 5 to 10 years? Like, what would you ideally want to be at?
Right. In 5 to 10 years, I want to make movies. I want to keep doing this as far as filmmaking goes and everything. Like, it's the most joy that I've gotten out of this whole experience, is being a director and being on set and problem solving all in those ways, and a story that I can completely shape and mold to my own desire. You know what I mean? And the more that I can figure out how to do that, the more I can spend time allocated to that and getting better at my craft, and in that way, the better.
Of course, I have about that, being a director and going that route, and you find enjoyment in being the director. Do you enjoy the pressure?
It's like, that's like a trick question.
When you're on set and it's up to you, you wrote it, everyone comes to you with questions.
Right.
Do you thrive on that pressure, 100%. Or do you get anxiety or stressed out about it?
I think the answer is both. At the best of it, 100%. Like when
you're in it.
Yeah, when I'm in it, and I'm just answering questions and problem solving, that's my favorite place in the whole world. When I'm just when it feels like things are moving at a million miles a second, and we got to make our time, and we got to figure out also watching the scene, what's working, what's not working. How do I give direction to actors? How do I communicate with camera?
You're in the flow. You're in the zone.
That's my very favorite. That's where it feels like everything's finally working on all gears, and it just is like, oh man, I could just do this forever.
Yeah.
Now when when you take too long and things go wrong, the more that you put yourself into the equation of like, oh, I'm done because this, or you start to beat yourself up instead of trying to just take yourself out of it and just problem solve. And that's why I think it's so nice to be in that moment and just firing on all cylinders, because you're just not thinking about yourself.
Yeah.
You're so lost in trying to make the best thing possible that you really are just like serving whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
And in those moments, you're taking yourself out of it.
Yeah.
But when on set, which has happened to me many times before as well, where you're with someone that you're intimidated with, or something's not going right, or maybe you feel like the energy is really bad, or that like, and you're like, think for some reason that's because of you, and that you're not bringing the right energy and everything. And then everything becomes about you, and then it's like impossible. And then it just feels like every word that comes out of your mouth is going to be wrong.
Yeah.
You know? And so yeah, it's.
I asked the question because I love directing, but I don't like the pressure beforehand. I love when we're on set and things are moving, and then I'm in the flow state. But like, that's why I love the idea of executive producing and like being in charge of the money and like hiring the right people and putting them in the place to succeed. I don't enjoy it even when we have shoots for our brands. Like just knowing that I need to be on set, it like causes turmoil.
Right.
But I know once I'm on set and I'm talking to the client and it's actually moving, then it's like I'm just in my element. But I hate that feeling beforehand.
I know.
So anyway,
and it has everything to do with, it's
contagious. Like, you feel like you're gonna get on set and fail. Like you feel like it's not gonna be good.
Yeah.
But then you realize when you get on set, it's like if you're confident enough and you've done it enough, and that's the other part is when you've done it enough, you're confident. Like you can put those feelings to rest, but they're still gonna be there, and just know that it's gonna turn out great.
Totally. The more I can joke around and make light of stuff, the more I feel like I am not thinking about so much stuff.
Yeah.
Like if almost like can be in that entertaining.
That's also a huge part of pre-production. If I've done the right things pre-production wise, when I show up on set, it's like easy.
Total.
But that's why I love to hire Zane and make him. I love to have him as an outlet of like he's my safety when when I don't quite know.
Right.
I go to Zane, let's talk, and then it works out.
Totally. Yeah.
But last thing is, you've given a ton of advice, but if someone walks up to you at Chick-fil-A and they want to follow in your steps and they want to get into narratives, what would you tell them? Because ultimately I bet when you ran into me there, you weren't thinking you'd be here, but something led you to that. What would you say to the person that would want to be doing what you're doing, which is probably a little bit of imposter syndrome? Like I'm not that guy, but you are. Right. You literally are creating films, and there's a lot of people that would love to create narratives and be creative, have the confidence to do that. What would you tell them?
I would say, that's a great question. I would say, start getting uncomfortable with the whole process, and I would say just start.
You know what I mean? Put yourself in the situation. Don't be scared.
100%. Going back to kind of like some of the examples we've talked about before, like coming back in to do contracted work for Tyson Media and working under Zane and everything like that. I had no idea what script format was. I didn't know how to write a script. I didn't know the structure. I didn't know story structure, like everything. You know what I mean? And you can only learn something from doing it. And the more that you enjoy doing it, the more that you're going to do it. And so I would say, like, figure out what part of the process you just enjoy without all the pressure taken away, with all the expectations, without how you think you're supposed to do it or what people want you to do with it and everything. Just strip everything back, figure out what you enjoy doing most in the process, and then just focus on that. And you're going to do that, and that's going to take you to the next thing. And just be open to things changing and you evolving in that way. But just starting off, I just don't think you can go anywhere unless you're enjoying what you're doing. Because the more that you're forcing yourself to enjoy doing something, it's like the worst feeling in the world. And you're going to feel bad at it, and you're not going to feel, essentially, just like motivation to keep going and stuff.
Ultimately, it's just like, because you're saying figure out, find out what you love and enjoy in the process. Like, they could easily be in your position when they're younger, when you ran into me, and think they want to be like you.
Right.
And then they start the process, and I went through this, I think everyone does, is they're like, I want to go down this road, but you don't quite know that you want to be this until you start throwing yourself into situations and start to find out where you actually thrive and what you actually enjoy. And it's going to change constantly, and it's just about refining it. So I think that's great advice. Just get started.
Totally.
Ultimately.
Yeah. And I feel like that's like, the more that you continue to do this and stuff like that, I feel like there's like a unspoken expectation that like at 30 you have to be here in your film career, and like then you have to, you know what I mean, like this is the proper way to progress as a filmmaker and stuff. But I really feel like the more that you can take the ego out of it, the more that you can take yourself out of it and just be okay with wherever you're at and just doing something because you want to do it. I feel like that's the call, but it's the hardest thing to remind yourself of, and that's the biggest thing.
There's the fear of the unknown. Like, you don't know totally going. You're just gonna start trying.
Totally.
Well, freaking A, dude, it was amazing to catch up with you, and I'm proud of you. Like, I'm stoked about where you're headed and where you want to be. I think that's so cool, and I love to see your progression from that little boy picking his nose at Chick-fil-A to working with Nomatic to then being fired and rehired by the same person. Redemption. And then leaving me to go work at Film Lab, and now you're working at Chirp. Like, you've done a lot, and you still got a lot ahead of you.
Thanks, man. So I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
For sure.
To catch up. Well,
like, subscribe, all that stuff, comment. Welcome to the journey. That's it.